All right. Back for another episode of P10 podcast. We survived the first one. A couple people even watched it. So we'll get number two rolling here today. Today, in the midst of the off season, we're doing some hot takes on F1 conspiracy theories and coincidences that have happened over the years. I've got team sabotaging drivers, Red Bull Renault 2016 engine issues, Ferrari engines, Fernando Alonso's infamous test crash that made him the forever rookie, and McLaren Spygate, and a couple coincidences going into this next season that have happened before. So, Colin, if you want to start off with some of the driver sabotage.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the biggest kind of conspiracies or coincidences that always kind of occur, I feel like every couple of years you always see these pop up, is a team basically sabotaging a driver, like deciding either they need to break contract or they need to, if maybe they have a performance clause or something going on, they decide let's just maybe not change a spark plug or give them a
Yep.
really real shit box engine, and see how well they do. And so there's been a couple of kind of bigger theories. The most recent one was Lewis last
Yep.
year.
Yep.
A lot of people especially on X, a lot of people don't want to dead name it and call it Twitter. A lot of people call it, basically oh, he's not doing as well. They're giving him a shittier car.
Yeah.
Same with Sebastian Vettel in 2020, if I remember correctly. His last year with Ferrari.
Yeah.
There's even kind of rumors they were doing that in 2019. Daniel Ricciardo in 2018, after he announced he was leaving the team, there was a lot of rumors of them swapping engines, or kind of moving things over, moving parts, and kind of sort of around those same lines, even then not McLaren, Mercedes backing Nico in 2016. They basically made the call and they were like, we're going to sabotage Lewis.
Right.
So
Yeah,
what do you
even
think?
a little bit of Senna and Prost back in the day too. Prost was always accusing McLaren of backing Senna more, and he had that relationship with Honda. So yeah, I don't know. Do you think it's any validity to that, or just the sour second place teammate?
I mean, nah, it's hard to know because you do look at sometimes you'd see these massive differences. I think in qualifying too, sometimes that's almost a
Yeah.
good way to look and be how is it that they're so far apart? And there's a couple times I guess with Lewis and Russell, and I mean, the teams don't really ever disclose if they are really given that bit give a difference of a setup. And I also kind of go back to the thing, and this to give it a little bit more validity too. A lot of these have come up, especially with the Mercedes thing. Oh, now with the cost cap, the lower you finish down, you get more wind tunnel time, which going into this next season could be crucial. But I mean, ultimately, I have a hard time seeing it, considering just the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going into the cars, the driver's salary, sponsorships, everything.
Yeah.
I have a hard time getting one side of the garage to sabotage a driver.
Yeah. I mean, Mercedes did say that George had some of the upgrades before Lewis did, but then George was also sitting back going, "No, you can have them. Take my car, buddy. It's fine." So, that happens a lot. They'll bring upgrades out for one driver first and kind of test it out. And I don't know how they decide that stuff, but yeah, I agree. Like you said,
They make them take shirtless pics, and then the team votes. No,
yeah, exactly. George, you won this one, or
you
you lost,
pasty
so you get this
bastard.
shit
Yeah.
upgrade. But I mean, even Red Bull, that's always kind of the thing that it's Max's car, and no one else can drive it, and obviously saw that of Checo, but then it is hard to believe that anyone would do that intentionally because, like you're saying with the money and everything behind it, Checo obviously kind of held on because of sponsorship dollars, but still they dropped numerous places in the Constructors' Championship. That cost them millions of dollars there too. So It just seems illogical to truly sabotage someone, but at the same time, you never know. They could have been pushing Lewis out the door this year for sure. Just,
Yeah. Well, and there
even if
was
they're just not putting the same effort in because they know he's moving on, they don't want him to know any secrets or developments for 25 or anything like that. So they just kind of keep him in the dark a bit. I mean, I can see that too.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and that's, and even then I would have a hard time calling that sabotage because they know
Right.
that, you know, they
Right.
know they can't have that. And then there's also been the reverse side of it. I mean, I remember famously it was came up with like Vettel in 2014. He was having a terrible season, and a lot of people were like, is he purposely like taking a dive to exercise a performance clause so he could go to Ferrari? I mean, it was
Mm,
known Fernando wasn't happy there. They weren't happy with him. Um, you know, I mean, I don't understand how he would be upset. They only delivered him a shitty car every single year,
yeah.
and he drug it to second every single year.
Yeah.
But you know, that was kind of the thought process there was like, is he, you know, sandbagging or doing other things? And ultimately, I mean, even being a pretty big Vettel fan, like I have to be like, no, like he, you know, it's like hard to like really see like without making it blatant on neither end. Like the garage guys, like what are they doing? Like, you know,
Yeah.
like taking the spark plugs out and spitting on them, or
Yeah.
you know, leave an extra thing of oil. Like I just
Piston in his fuel tank.
take that.
Yeah,
But yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, I've heard these things. You bring up a good one with like Prost and Senna. I could see that. You know, and there was the rumors like with like Lewis and Fernando when they were there at McLaren, but like there was no real like smoking gun of like actual sabotage that was
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the summary of it is there's always a lot of rumors and never any proof. And that happens a lot in F1 is a lot of drama. And then nothing really actually materializes out of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So like again, Red Bull this year is just drama, and then did anything really happen? No, Checo wrote out his contract or wrote out the season, and then gone, and drama with Lewis, and then he won Silverstone.
Right.
So, were they sabotaging, and then they got caught, and they're like, "Oh shit, we better put this stuff back in the car."
Well, and in a lot of recent events, our favorite toxic French duo at Alpine, I
Yeah,
mean, they made it pretty clear that they didn't want Ocon not only driving the car but in the team. Like, if there was a place ripe for sabotage,
yeah, seriously,
I wouldn't put it past them. I mean,
yeah,
Alpine seems pretty toxic, and also it seems like they didn't really want him there,
yeah,
and we didn't see that. I mean, yeah, his performance wasn't as good as Gasly, but also it's like it can sound like it was the best environment. So I don't really.
yeah,
That was probably more of a mental thing than you know anything
yeah.
physically or hardware wise.
What do you think of that whole seat testing thing at Williams? I mean, I don't know, like,
They dodged a bullet.
yeah, yeah, right.
They
I mean,
dodged a
it's kind
big
of
French complaining bullet. Sorry.
yeah. It seems like this. Oh, he got busted because he took the media car and mid-season. It's like, well, yeah, he was obviously looking for other drives. Like, clearly he wasn't going to stay there. So, what's really the big issue?
So that was my question too. So when was it? It was during the Silverstone Grand Prix. Is that
I think so. Yeah.
so?
I
They
think so.
already said they weren't renewing his contract. They
Right.
didn't want him there. So
Yeah.
like to me, this is sort of a non-story, and it's
Yeah.
like if you don't think because it's a company like marketing vehicle, you
Yeah.
know they've got the tracker in there just in case someone steals it or just
Yeah.
keeping tabs.
Well, throw in
I
the you're doing personal business on company time with company
yeah,
assets kind of
ex-
thing.
exactly.
We're going to sue you for the gas money.
I mean, once again, considering how toxic they are, but it's also kind of a thing too where it's like I'm not surprised they did it, but I am shocked that they just openly admit it because
Yeah.
like
Hey, why? I don't know.
right.
What purpose does that serve for anything?
It's sort
Makes
of
no
like after
sense.
you break up and like everyone kind of views like, you know, like, oh, you know, it was amicable, whatever, good split. And then you just like start like really being like, you know what else I did that helped facilitate this breakup? They're like,
Yeah.
they kind of question a lot of that too.
Exactly. He's digging up dirt. Doesn't matter at this point.
Right. Like, maybe I don't need to hear more about this. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's just move on now. This is messed up. That's funny. What about Mercedes back in Rosberg in 16?
Oh, okay. So that one's a little bit more. There is a little bit more validity to that one, and there is a little bit more like kind of smoke, if you will, because of the fact that I think it was announced like either right before the season or pretty soon into it that they were swapping the mechanics. I think mechanics and maybe engineers.
Yeah.
So everyone was completely moved over. So if you're on Lewis's side, you're now Nico's, which is really odd considering that was like a big thing that Lewis really admired when he first came to Mercedes, was that he was talking about how when Jensen came to McLaren, they took a couple of Lewis's engineers and mechanics, and they gave them to Jensen because Jensen was a world champ, and he wasn't too happy about that, and you can understand that.
Yeah.
They both were world champs, and it was like kind of an interesting move by McLaren.
Yeah.
So for them to kind of completely swap something that's already been like a good working relationship. Keep in mind, Lewis had won the two previous championships, 14 and 15. So that one is kind of odd and it's interesting. And then the fact too that Lewis had pretty much the lion's share of mechanical failures. Of course, that infamous like engine blow up in Malaysia, I believe. And he kind of pointed out, he's like, all the Mercedes engines are running, perfectly, and he's like, why? But mine keeps getting issues. And I think even that year it was like him and Fernando were at the back of the grid at Spa because they had to take an absurd amount of like engine penalties. So that one, it's kind of hard to refute.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things that come into it too. There was supposedly pressure coming from Daimler, AMG, Mercedes. Like, they want the German driver. A lot of people also speculated it was like kind of there to like kind of placate Nico, kind of keep tensions a little bit better. That was also the year they crashed in Spain. Yeah, that one, I could kind of believe that one if you were to say something. But once again, it's like really hard. I have a hard time really imagining like, the actual, like when you like really like think about like what that would require, like getting the mechanics to be like, hey, I know this isn't Boeing, but I want you to just like look at the other side of like, if those seals look bad, like don't worry about it. Like,
exactly.
So
that little guy, don't worry about that little guy.
It's fine.
It'll be fine. Boeing. Yeah, you're on the hit list now. Already.
But I mean, like, what do you think? I mean, isn't that kind of odd? Like,
it is odd, and it seems like this simple formula of just give the guys equal stuff, let them go race, and figure it out. The best one's going to win. But McLaren kind of tried doing that this year, and it was freaking chaos. So, swapping drivers around all the time, and oh shit, we got strategy wrong, and now Lando's out front, but Oscar should have won, and so maybe McLaren 2025 will back us up on this and start sabotaging one of the cars, and all of a sudden one of the guys is going to suck. Man, this engine just keeps blowing up on Oscar every weekend. I don't know why.
Yeah. Dang Mercedes. I don't know what's going on.
British bias.
We just yeah, exactly. We just handle it and install it and service it, but whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I truly don't know. It just seems weird, but
it's also because I mean, and I gotta imagine if you're a mechanic, like if you've made it to Formula One, that's like kind of the pinnacle of like mechanic jobs.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like if you're on like the engineering team at Red Bull in 2018 when that Renault kept blowing up, or like McLaren Honda, they're like, oh, if like you're applying for another job,
yeah, exactly.
And they're like, oh, you had 3 years at McLaren. What years were you there? You're like, 2015 and 2017. They're like, oh, Oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
yeah. Oh, is all Honda? Okay. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
anyways,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm really good at leaving stuff loose and forgetting to put oil in the motor. And that
it's
sounds like I
fine.
would hire him.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys forget to put oil in a bike? Yeah, you're hired.
Just don't do it too much. It might look like it's on purpose. No.
Yeah, exactly. It's every once in a while. Oh man. All right. Well, one of my favorites is the Alonso McLaren Honda testing crash in 2015. No, just partially because of the memes and debauchery that has kind of come out of that. But that was a really weird. I was reading up on it again this morning, and it's still not really conclusive on what happened. McLaren said a gust of wind took him. He said there was something wrong with the car. He got knocked out. There's a theory that he woke up thinking it was 1995, or that he was still in karts and hoping to get to F1. And then he says, no, that didn't happen. And then they thought he got hit with like 600 kilowatts of electricity because they didn't understand the energy management systems on the car very well, and it might have hit him. But the dude hasn't aged a day since then. So, like, did he freaking parallel universe himself, glitch himself out of the simulation? Like, he's been rookie of the year ever since 2015. So what the hell?
You know, until you said that, it then kind of clicked. I was like, oh yeah, whatever electrical force came out of that Honda engine, it was like the same thing that like was, CERN was doing. It
Yeah,
must have ripped a
exactly.
hole in the universe, and
Yeah,
so,
yeah. He entered some different, really close timeline that doesn't age. Like seriously, he's as I get older, 45 doesn't seem as old to me as 25 does young to me anymore. It doesn't
right.
seem that bad. But in racing speak, he's freaking ancient. Ancient. Like, how does he drive an F1 car that way still? And he's still just kind of the same dude.
And what's interesting too,
He just hasn't aged.
no, I guess I'll make the point. He with that Honda engine electrically shocked him. It must have, like ripped a hole in the universe, kind of like with CERN. It was
Yeah.
like the two biggest energies in the world: Japanese electricity and
And
Fernando Alonso big balls
Alonso.
power.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. It was too much for it to handle.
Well, I was gonna your point that you were making. Uh, for him being his age, it's like Lewis turned 40 this year,
Yeah.
and everybody's already, when he kind of like misses it in qualifying or makes a mistake, everyone's like, well, like he is 40. You don't hear that shit with Fernando.
No, never. And then when early last 23 or whatever, when he had a decent car, but you saw what he could do, and he was a freaking animal still.
Yeah.
His passes were insane. He still just bullied Lewis. Like, it's still the same Fernando. Or,
Maybe.
God, what race was it when he was still in Alpine and he ran into, was it Ocon, and just went flying and somehow landed the car back kind of on the track and just kept going for the rest of the race? Like, what?
Totally the like, I'm fine. Like, just
Yeah.
like, no, like, he
Yeah,
probably didn't even skip a beat. Like,
no.
just, yeah, the concentration of that guy. And maybe that's the other superpower it gave him. Like, it just, like, he gets in the car and then it just, like, his concentration
Yeah.
just goes through the roof.
It's like full psychopath. Just zones in. Yeah. Oh, that guy's crazy.
But that one was weird because no one, and it's been 10 years at this point, and no one's really, like, come out and said anything. Like, he never has, like, really
Yeah.
clarified anything about the crash either.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, that one, I think there's some funky. I do think he just got hit with the electricity and something happened.
You watch next season because that's the first year he'll be back in a Honda engine. Is he like in testing, just like white knuckling it, like, oh,
Yeah.
please don't let this happen again. So...
Either that, or he's like, I'm reunited with my power. My
He's like,
energy source is back.
recharge.
Yeah, exactly. He's gonna start sticking his finger in all the find some wires and chew on them. Let's do this again.
He gets out of the first race, pulls off his helmet, and his hair is just like smoldering. So...
Looks like freaking Einstein in there. Like, ah. That was awesome. Oh man. Oh, what else we got? We got Mercedes tire test 2013. I don't know anything about that one.
Oh, that one. So that one was basically, I think, for those earlier races, pretty much like almost all the early races of that season. Um, it was Mercedes just sticking it on pole. Like Lewis and Nico were pretty much like dominating, getting pole position.
Yeah.
Seb was at the Red Bull. He had a pretty solid car, but then as soon as they'd get into the race, the Mercedes would just chew up their tires. And then miraculously, like in Spain, they like I can't remember, but they dominated pole position by some like crazy margin. I think locked out the grid, the front row of the grid, and then they just like 15 laps in, the tires are just trash, and they're just going backwards. So then somewhere between Spain and Monaco, which is really only a week, I think, even at that time, they somehow had some miraculous fix because Monaco came, Nico sticks it on pole, is able to get the tires across the finish line. And granted, it's Monaco,
Yeah.
but the performance was pretty substantial. And so everyone was like, well, what the hell happened? How come, within 1 week, you guys are able to get under these tires under control? Well, then it came out, this is actually one of the true conspiracies. They actually did. They had a special test with Pirelli, and they ran that current spec car. And I don't even really remember exactly how they got away with that, or like I think they called it part like filming day or something else. But both Nico and Lewis were able to go test tires like all day effectively. And for the rest of the season, they were much better. I mean, it was like kind of one of those things I actually am still like shocked that they just got away with. There was no penalty, nothing. And like Lewis won the Hungarian Grand Prix that year, if I remember correctly, and was challenging at a lot of other races until Seb went into beast mode. But they completely got away with that, and it was a conspiracy that was true.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's kind of like McLaren in the water in the tires this year. It's like, yeah, it's still going on.
Right.
Did it ever come? They weren't actually, or there wasn't any proof, anyways, of putting water in the tires.
Yeah, it's a lot. Exactly, and it kind of reminds me of like the Ferrari engine in 2019. Like the rumor kind of with that was like they suspected X, Y, and Z, but no one was really ever able to prove it.
Yeah.
And I kind of think this is sort of that same thing. Like it's pretty funny, like for the most like technologically advanced like race series in the world, certain things the FIA just is like, I don't know how to check that.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing with F1. It's so advanced, it's so developed, you got this freaking regulations book that's probably more well written than any other sport on the planet, and 90% of the time they're just going, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to do. We can't test this. And Inspector Seb probably has a better chance of figuring it out than anybody. Like, it makes no sense. You don't have that even in smaller sports like motocross. There's a very specific rule book, and there's never any gray area. It's like, hey, bike's too loud. This fuel is wrong fuel, whatever. And it's very just easy and cut and dry, and that's a tiny sport with a fraction of the money of F1. Smartest people in the world just, I don't know.
Well, yeah, like I remember when they were trying to enforce tire sizing rules in cycling, they literally just had like a block of like 2 2x4s or and they're just checking everyone's tire. But and it makes me think like sometimes when these like technical directives before they get put out, when they're like, hey, there's a suspicion of this cheating. Like if the FIA engineers are just like, whew, that's clever.
Yeah.
And they're just like, well, all right.
Yeah. Damn.
Well, good show. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, maybe we need more blocks of wood and sticks. Or when I was racing hair scrambles and stuff, I got to one of the races in like Espanola, New Mexico or something, and they were checking for spark arresters. And I had my new bike, and it didn't have a spark arrestor. It had stock muffler on it. And they came back and just like rammed a stick into my exhaust, just like right through the muffler. I'm like, fucking buy me dinner first, bro. He stuck the stick in there though, and was like, hit something. I don't know what he hit, but he hit something. He's like, "Oh, you're good." I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, dude.
He pull it out and be like, smells like a KTM. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Sweet smell of legality.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's what I was like. I know I'm not good. Anybody can tell I'm not good, but your stick said I was, so whatever.
I would love it if next season they're just checking the cars and they just pull out like a bunch of like broomsticks and they're like, oh, we gotta check this, or they're like, oh, we better check those tires for air. Let's just jam a rod in there. No air or no water. So.
Yeah, exactly. Go around like poking the tires. That feels good.
Nah, I like it.
F1 needs a little more of that. Some IndyCar, NASCAR influence, duct tape the shit back together. And
come on, it's down. Right. Like Miami Grand Prix, they like to act like it's all posh. Like they need like some like backwoods like redneck guy with like a mullet, like just checking over the cars, being like, that one's out. That's not right. Like, so.
Yeah, exactly. This son of a bitch is definitely overweight. It's like my third wife.
He's like popping in a dip, like as he's saying it, he's like, man, that I know when this is bad. This is bad.
Yeah, exactly. We need to add an authentic American spin to the races.
I would love that.
Florida. I mean, come on,
dude. And you know, it would get rid of all the annoying celebrities that are there just for like the posh like scene. Like you know, you start bringing in a little bit of that like Florida man, like Gator style. Like that would really change the show pretty quickly. So.
Exactly. Make everyone shotgun a beer before the start.
Oh, I love this.
It could be Bud Light, and you get bonus points if you don't turn gay afterwards.
It'd be tough.
Fernando would be fine. That dude's the straightest guy in the book.
Right, he just powers through it. Like,
yeah, exactly. No. Oh, man. What about the old McLaren Spygate 07?
Oh, so this one was an interesting one, which, by the way, if someone hasn't watched the 2007 F1 season, I highly recommend it because it was basically just kind of cutthroat from the beginning. Lewis was a rookie. Fernando came into McLaren. He was already a two-time world champ at Renault. Pretty much immediately was pissed because he's like, I'm the world champ, I'm here. And then now he's got this rookie who's battling with him. And it was a pretty amazing development race between McLaren and Ferrari. This is back when Ferrari was still like technologically the best, and they could actually outdevelop every other team during a season. And I can't remember, somewhere along the way though, I think it was like halfway through the season, and like I still had to look it up to make sure. A McLaren mechanic, when he somehow obtained some schematics or something from the Ferrari team, went to like the equivalent of like the British Kinkos and was trying to photocopy them. The guy there at the Kinkos was a Formula One fan, and he's like,
no way.
He's like, what the fuck is this? And I double checked it. This is the case. The guy was like, and I'm like, I'm guessing like, did the dude show up like wearing like a McLaren hat, McLaren t-shirt or whatever? And he's like, how do you have Ferrari plans? He reached out to someone and was able to get in touch with the FIA. Come to find out, it was the case. They totally like, I can't remember, some mechanic like sold him the plans, but it was like obtained in this like bad way, and so McLaren got they got disqualified from the constructors championship.
Yeah.
And there was like a famous line from the FIA president. I think it was Max Mosley at the time. I could be professional and look this up, but anyways, I'm pretty certain. I do remember this happening. Right. Let's just waste the audience's time and just go with this. But anyways,
that'd be for a P1 or P3 kind of show, or a P10.
Right. If you are here at this point, you know what we're bringing to the table.
Yeah, exactly.
So he. But Max Mosley, this is when Ron Dennis was running McLaren, and I guess like when they kind of announced it and they were like actually doing the sanctioning and like handing down the penalty, they gave him $100 million fine, or £100 million fine, and I guess supposedly he, like, a lot of people heard Max, like, he leaned right over to Ron because he just hated Ron Dennis, and he goes, it was, their actual infraction was 10 million, but I made it 100 because you're such an asshole, or something like that. And I just peak, like, and yeah, and it was hilarious too because those guys would have won the constructors.
Yeah.
I mean, hands down. Like, Massa wasn't producing, Raikkonen was on a tear and ended up winning the championship thanks to Lewis and Fernando taking points off each other. But yeah, so they were completely disqualified for stealing the Ferrari car plans and getting caught at a Kinko's.
That's Luigi Mangione stuff right there.
Kinko's, McDonald's, you know.
Yeah.
So
pull off this brilliant assassination. It's like, wait, some dude's in McDonald's with a manifesto wearing all the clothes.
He's like, I need a spicy chicken sandwich to celebrate this huge success.
Things that don't make sense. All right, what else we have? Indy GP 05, and we got Crashgate Singapore. I don't know shit about either one of those either.
Oh, I'm really showing my age.
Old ass.
Indy. Indy is kind of, and this one's like kind of a weird one because it's like less of a conspiracy, but effectively, most people kind of like hold this one up as like one of the biggest, like, farces in like F1, because effectively this was during the tire wars. So they had Michelin and Bridgestone, and they were competing. So it was kind of, I would love to see the tire wars come back, by the way. I'd love to see someone else other than Pirelli. And it was really cool because like each team then could like specifically develop their car to that tire. So like Ferrari was with Bridgestone, and so basically that was kind of the whole thing. Was they showed up there, and Indy they use part of the Indy 500 track, so it has like the banking and the slope on one of the corners. And I'm kind of curious too, because I wonder how much of that banking is that much more aggressive than what they have at Zandvoort, but that's a whole other question. But basically they got there, and because of the downforce that was going through the cars at the time, Michelin was like, our tires they're not going to hold up. Like, everyone's either going to have to like lift, or they're going to have to like take it like so much slower, like a couple of gears down, because they're like the lateral stress going into the tires that they're not going to hold. And there was like rumors about this, not rumors, it was like pretty open, like talked about. And so then come Sunday for the race, it was literally, they go do the formation lap, and at the end of it, every single car with Michelin just pulls off into the pits and basically just retires the car because they're like, we can't. God. And so it was, I think I remember it was like a 5-team, not even, it was like a 6-car race. And it was like one of Schumacher's like last wins, which people are kind of like, you know, because it was, everyone else had Michelin and they had to retire. And so it was a Ferrari 1-2. And and I don't think they gave people refunds. Like, people were pissed. Like, it was a big reason why like F1 has not come back to Indianapolis. So
gotcha. I was just gonna, as you started talking about that, I was gonna Gotta say, it could be cool to bring multiple tire brands back in, kind of like engines or anything. Something to. Right now, you got everyone running the same tire, so everyone runs pretty much the same strategy because they all have the same information. And yeah, certain cars deal with it better than others, but tires would be a cool other variable. But if that's going to happen,
And that's
could ruin it pretty quick.
well, and I think that's also I think if I remember correctly, and I think that's partly why it's like kind of brought up as like a conspiracy, is
Yeah,
because like that's always been sort of the argument against like opening it up outside of a single supplier was because they basically were like, oh, well, what if we show up at a track, what if we show up in Qatar or some, crazy track like that and they can't handle the heat,
yeah,
and they're blowing out left and right. And like there is like some validity to that because that
yeah,
was um just like one of the most like ridiculous things that ever to take place. Yeah, it was literally 6 cars finished,
yeah.
and it was yeah, Schumacher, Barrichello, and then everyone. The two Jordans were a lap down, and then the minority Cosworths were 2 laps down,
Jeez,
and everybody else was just withdrawn from the race.
that's
So
crazy. Yeah, I mean that's interesting. There's been kind of discussion about it with Supercross too, because the tracks get so chewed up. And a lot of the guys now run a scoop tire just to get the start. And then they've got a
right,
scoop on a hard pack track, and it's A, sketchier, probably more dangerous, and B, just to chews the track up so bad. So I've heard the pitch of they need to introduce like a supercross spec tire that isn't quite as knobby and aggressive, so it'll let the track hold up a little bit better so that it can maintain longer with the short amount of prep time they have between heats and races and everything. So that could make sense because I guess in the other like Dunlop pretty much dominates that,
right.
and most everyone's running the same Dunlop at each race. You might have one or two guys that veer off to something different, but it ends up being there's a clear, obvious best choice, and then you run with that anyways. So
Yeah, and it's kind of and like you always have to like go props to Dunlop or whoever's getting it right. Because it's like, well, clearly, like, I mean, that's part of the sport. Like, I kind of get
yeah,
mad, like, when people, like, without taking the, like, rant sidetrack, but it's like when people are like, oh, they built the best car. It's bullshit. So and so won. They've got the best car. I'm like, yeah, that's part of the sport.
that's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why they got a constructor's champ. They
yeah,
won, like, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why they acknowledge that. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think, you can look at that in a lot of sports. I mean, it's almost
hmm
like even like mountain biking, like
yeah,
Shimano's not producing any new drivetrain. They haven't updated it since 2020. More and
yep,
more people are switching to SRAM. You kind of like look and it's like they've got the advantage. So, and I like that because then you would hope, and I imagine we'll see like Shimano's going to come out with something new.
yeah,
And I think, yeah, I think it would. It'd bring like a new element to the racing if like I understand like how people kind of get worried about like, oh, well, what if one manufacturer or one company back to the tire thing like shits the bed.
yeah.
But it's like to me, I feel like that is like an actual like real representative problem and something I'd kind of like to see.
Yeah,
So
and it gives accountability and progression too, because if right now Pirelli could just go make whatever and they'll be like, sorry, what are you going to do about it? This is what the limit is, change your car. But if there's other brands out there, say Bridgestone comes back and makes a tire that's 10 times better than any Pirelli, then Pirelli has to step up their game or they don't exist anymore. It's,
and also, how many times do you hear the drivers complaining about the tires? So what if
yeah, it's like the whole sport is just mitigating tire wear at this point.
right? So like once again, to your point, Michelin comes in and is like, "Hey, we'll give you a tire that you can push on for even 5 laps harder than the Pirelli."
Yeah.
That's going to be, and then also, what was it? Was it 2 years ago with Ferrari chewing up their tires super fast?
hmm
What if Michelin? I'm just hypothetically, what if Michelin was like, "Hey, we can work with that," and then it becomes
Yeah.
an advantage. I mean, it's like that's kind of these are sort of the things that like I personally would love to see come back into
Yeah.
F1. So
Yeah. No, I can see it. At some point, you almost regulate yourself into stagnation.
100%.
And that's F1's not the most exciting thing to watch on, on the track. You know?
Right.
for the most part. You get some good races and stuff, but yeah, it's a lot of time just a tire strategy and pit stop game.
Right.
So, dang. What
was the other one you asked me?
Crashgate, Singapore.
Oh.
Wait.
So this one is, of any of the ones on this list, this is also another like legit conspiracy where people like were behind the scenes conspiring to do something untoward to manipulate the outcome of a race. And that was effectively like what happened was 08. So Fernando's back at Renault the second time, and they just produced a dog of a car. It just sucked, and he was there. And basically they hadn't won. They hadn't had like any results of note that year. And so Flavio Briatore was there. It's funny, all the things that are coming back. But basically he was running the team, and they came up with the idea. It was in Singapore, where a street track, hard to pass, not the easiest thing to accomplish. And so they basically were working with is it Bruno? I'm pretty sure it's Bruno Senna, the second driver, and they were like, "You're gonna." It's almost like boxing. Like you go down in the fifth, they're like basically on like the 35th lap or whatever. We're gonna have Fernando pit. He's gonna pit early. It's gonna look like kind of like the bold choice, bold kind of like decision, and then you're gonna crash the car in the wall. And that's what he did. And it and even at the time, people were like, "Oh my god!" Like the announcers. I mean, it's like one of the funniest things. They're like, "What are the odds?" Like, Fernando pits, and then like, "Oh my god!" They're like, his teammate crashes, safety car. So now he's got track advantage and everything. And almost immediately, people were like, "This is too good to be true." And which is funny because it's like, of all people, like. Well, one, they were like, Fernando Alonso does not have this good of luck. And two, they were like, it just is. It was just too good. And it's like the press conference, he was getting grilled. And then I think it was a full year later that Senna didn't get a seat. And he was like, it's not Senna, it's PK. Sorry, I totally am screwing this up. Yeah, PK Jr. Nelson PK Jr. That's who it is. It's Brazilian. But anyways, he... Geographically, I'm right. But anyways, he came out. He was like basically like out of the sport, and then he was like, no, they sat me down and they were like, this is what we're gonna do. And I'm pretty sure he got a ban. And then up until recently, Briatore was banned, but they brought him back.
That's why. Yeah. So now he's back at Alpine.
Yeah.
And history is going to repeat itself. We have Fernando, and we have Lance Stroll. That's the reason they're keeping Stroll around. They can send him out to do that, and no one will bat an eye. They'll just be like, "It's fucking Stroll again."
They'd be like, dude, that window liquor.
That's my hot take.
Right.
Crashgate is coming back.
That's probably what got Newey to sign on. Was they're like, dude, not only do we have Fernando, we got a sacrificial lamb, and no one's gonna question it. So...
We will put Stroll into the wall at any point in time, and no one's gonna think anything of it.
Like, better yet, we got Honda that's gonna shock him, so he won't even like.
Yeah, exactly.
He's only got like 5 brain cells. Like, it's not gonna hurt him. It's fine.
Just don't even worry about him.
We cleared it with his dad. He said it's great. Just do it.
Yeah. It's the entire reason he's done this for so long.
He's been prepping for going into the wall every season. He's awesome at this.
Exactly. He was on the radio in Brazil just going, hey, just back the car into the gravel. Look like a fucking idiot. We got to set the stage now. We know you're not doing shit. Just back it into the gravel.
This is part of the... Oh, dude, maybe this is El Plan. What was it?
El Plan.
El Plan, exactly.
Yeah, it's El Plan.
Fernando just presses a button, El Plan, and Lance gets shocked and then just crashes the damn car.
It's like that one, I don't even know who it was, but that one Red Bull crash where dude's just going down and all 4 wheels just blow off the car. Fernando just pushes the button and Stroll just doesn't have any wheels or tires anymore.
You just see on the pit board, Newey's like, it worked.
He's here. El Plan.
He's like looking over, he's like, told you guys. Like, look at that. It was look how far they shot. It worked. So,
Ugh.
wow. All right,
Yeah,
I sport it.
that's
Go
it.
for it.
What's
Yeah,
happening?
go for it.
That's L plan. We figured it out.
That's fine. You know what? And hey, if that's their plan for Lance, keep him in. I'll see it. I will watch that.
I mean, it makes more sense than any other plan for keeping him in.
Makes sense.
Oh man. All right. We think we got a couple more. We've been rolling for about 45, 50 minutes.
Okay.
You want to roll through the rest and we can either do a long,
Yeah,
we can cut it, or we can do
yeah,
more
let's roll
later.
through it, and then if we gotta cut it, like,
Yeah. Yeah, we could split it in two maybe.
yeah, I think that I like that idea. Actually, I think
Okay.
that could be good.